All right, let's do the same thing again now. Let's focus on the arms. Let's make actually arms and hands. Though when you're doing this in terms of real life, I encourage you to treat the arms and hands separately. The hands, I don't know if you know this, if you had, have you seen that little homunculus brain model? It's basically, it's a little picture of a man, and it's in proportion to how much area of the brain is dedicated to processing information from that. For example, the eyes have a lot of information, so the eyes are huge, the face is huge, the lips are massive, but the hands are enormous as well. Arms are quite skinny, the back and the torso is relatively small. So the arms and the feet have a lot of receptors in there. A lot of the brain is linked to these things. So the hands will give you a lot of information about someone, as well as the feet. Does that make sense? So for the moment, I want you to just pay attention to their arms and their hands just in general. And this is something which will become even more obvious to you when you're sitting down, when you're having casual conversations. You can see it right now as I'm talking to you. You see how my hands are doing things as I'm talking, right? These will all tell you some things. For example, if I'm talking to you, and I'm not going to change anything about my posture or about my tonality, about my rate or anything like that, do you notice how you perceive me differently just because of what I do with my hands, right? So is this, would you say, am I confident right now or less confident? Right? But nothing's really changed about me. Now, have I become more confident or less confident in the last few seconds? Right? So do you notice how instinctively you can already tell a lot about a person? It's just we don't pay attention to these things that consciously. So now we want to create more awareness of these things so that it becomes more of a factor in how we evaluate what someone's doing. Does that make sense? All right, guys, so same exercise again. Pay attention to arms and hands. If you happen to catch a glimpse of the torso and the legs, then that's fine. And remember, you're going to mix and match people that you like and dislike. All right, don't tell them which they are. Just project, someone that you like or someone you dislike onto that person so they can see different behaviors and mannerisms. Make sense? Off you go. How's that? Interesting? Right? Are you noticing certain things with the hands and the arms again? Right? Go ahead. Actually, do you want to come up and make it easier because then everyone can hear as well? We don't have to repeat everything then.
I was noticing that it was hard for me not to mirror the other person, so if they seem to not like me, I didn't like them. Right. And if they like me a lot, then I like them more.
Now, I want you to just really pay attention to what Amma was just saying, because this is really important. Did anyone else notice this? When someone really likes you a lot, you can't help but like them back. And I'm talking about the emotional stuff, the physiology just comes out as a result of it, right? Versus if someone really doesn't like you, you kind of like, oh, give you the cold shoulder, remember? Do you think, where does that expression come from? Because people know it's the cold shoulder. It's the shoulder of, the person you don't like. Let's say I don't like Amma. I'm going to turn my back onto them. That's an example of someone I don't like. It's a physical expression of it. And the emotions drive this whole thing, right? And this is what we're coming onto in a very short moment of time. This idea of matching and mirroring. Who's come across this? Matching and mirroring. So you want to adopt similar body language. We'll turn that on. We'll come to in a second. We adopt similar body language to people that we're in rapport with and so on. So to get more rapport, we'll adopt their body language. The problem is, if the emotions aren't in the right place, emotions drive behavior. So if you really dislike someone and your emotions like this, like, okay, I'm gonna marry you now, right? It comes out so forced and awkward and weird that there's a miscommunication there, and people actually will take greater offense at inelegant matching and mirroring. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So we need to let the emotions drive their behavior, which is what we're getting into with the, who's here heard the instant rapport technique, right? We'll come on to that later on today. And it's really built into the whole concept of H+. When you have your emotions in the right place, then your physiology, your behaviors will go into the right place. When your behaviors are in the right place, then everything is locked into a position where you have what Amo just talked about, which is people can't help but like you. And then all I want to do today, or this morning, is do those three magic things. How can you create the right mental state, the emotional state, to make it happen? What are you going to do physically to ensure it happens? And then how are you going to cement that whole process in that's a natural part of the interaction? Those are the three key things. So that ultimately, my aim is that you guys can do something which, for me, used to be a myth. It took me years and years to figure out how to do this. And I promise I will come to you in a moment. You know, back in my early days of training in hypnosis, and I did some NLP and stuff like that, I used to hear this myth that one trainer was out there somewhere who could walk into a restaurant, a crowded room, and who could mind his own business, eating his food, and suddenly people from across the room would come over and start talking to him and chat to him and like they were his best friends, and he did that just by matching and mirroring their body language. So I tried it, and it didn't work very well. However, there is a way to make exactly that happen, and once we finish this sort of segment here in terms of getting used to the body language, we'd like to show you how to do that.
Sure.
Right? It's not a cure-all. In other words, there are certain type of person that will not work with, and we'll talk about that when we get onto it. But with maybe 80-90% of people you meet, it will work with, and you'll have more friends than you can know what to do with. Sound good? Mm-hmm. So let's just turn on to your question or your comment quickly, and then we'll carry on with this.
Just a quick comment. I would find that what would happen to me when I ran into somebody that didn't like me, mm-hmm. I would actually do some things with my hands mm-hmm. that would change their whole attitude. And okay. I've caught myself doing it unconsciously, mm-hmm. And I'm going, oh, well, that's interesting, you know, that I'm actually changing their attitude toward me.
So you have a behavior that's designed to, shall we say, diffuse whatever tension is between the two of you, right? It's very true, right? Do you see how useful this stuff is starting to become, right? You can now, again, we're doing conversational hypnosis. Why are we talking about hands and feet? And look, I'm doing conversational hypnosis with my foot, right? But all these things are part of how you have a conversation. This is how you converse with people. So if you don't have these things aligned with what you're talking about, well, then you might be a snake oil salesman who people don't trust because there's something not quite right about what they're doing, right? You may mean very well, but if things aren't quite lining up, well, the whole message becomes a little bit more awkward. It doesn't become very impactful. Does that kind of make sense to you guys? So we need everything to come together. This is just another one of those pencils we're going to put into our set so that when we have the whole package, it becomes just really powerful, right? So go ahead.
Hey.
There you go.
Sorry. Thanks. Sorry. Quick comment. I just noticed that people that I knew or had like a relationship with usually grip my hand harder, but I was noticing the difference of people from different countries or even regions of the U.S. Even people that I already have a really good relationship that are not exactly American mm-hmm. tended not to grip as hard.
Yes.
And it was odd how I think some bigger men treated me more daintily.
Yes.
Even though I saw them grip other people's hands more hard, I was just noticing the difference of Southerners versus Northerners and everything.
Just to point something out, which is actually kind of important, a handshake is not a universal signal. In other words, it's a socialized signal, right? Which means you'll get a lot of social varieties. Different regions will be used more to the firm handshake. You know, maybe like in farming country, people are used to working out, so then the handshake becomes firmer. In other areas, it might be less so. In Asia, they don't shake hands, so you'll get some really dead, limp fish going through. It's just because it's a cultural thing, right?
Yeah.
So people tend to judge other people by their handshake, and believe it or not, that is the worst thing to judge another person by, because that is something to do with their culture. It has nothing to do with their inner state, their emotions, or their mindset, and so on. Does that make sense to you guys?
What I was noticing, yeah.
Right. So that's an excellent thing to notice, that the things we actually put most attention to in terms of how we evaluate the other person on first meeting them, very often are the worst things to evaluate them by because they have the least amount of information about that person. Make sense? So excellent spot, thank you. Go ahead. It was already on, thank you.
What I'm finding is that I see a lot of individual variation in what's happening, or I don't see any variation at all. I'm having trouble discerning patterns. And I'm wondering if you can help with that.
Give me an example what you mean by no variation at all.
Well, when we were doing the arm exercise, it seems to me that everyone pretty much holds the left arm straight out here, and I don't really see much variation in what's happening with the shaking arm either.
Sure.
And similarly with the legs, well, actually the opposite problem with the legs. You see this pattern, we see this pattern. It seems like there's too much variability for me to discern a pattern.
Okay, great. So again, and this is, by the way, if you through the whole body, it gets even worse like that. So if you get overloaded with patterns, then you just go down and focus on smaller elements like foot position and so on. Something that'll make your life easier. And by the way, remember, we were just walking around shaking people's hands, so not all the natural signals will come out at this point, right? This is more to get you guys sensitized to seeing things, so we can start pulling out patterns as we go along, right?